We're live, and my headphones are connected. So, good morning. How is everyone doing today? I think I'm gonna turn myself sideways. Excuse me while I adjust the backdrop here. Let me know if you can hear me all right. Let me know if quality is good and sound is good. I do have some neighbors doing a little bit of landscaping in the background. I hope you cannot hear that. So welcome to Talk Stories edition. Hi, I'm Seychelle, and we're going to talk about hip hinging today. And so if you are joining and you want to play along, the only prop that you might not necessarily need, but that you could use if you wanted to, is a paddle. So otherwise you can do this anywhere, anytime, and I'm going to give you some things that you'll definitely want to take home and practice. So definitely comment, ask questions. I will be checking those as we go along. If I say something that doesn't make sense, let me know, because I can always explain things in multiple ways. I'm really good at saying the same thing using different words, and so I want to make sure that you're understanding what I'm saying. So please do comment, question, even just say hi, where you're tuning in from, and yeah, let's get started. So today I want to talk about hip hinging. I want to talk about what is a hip hinge, why it's useful, and how to properly perform one. And then how that applies to paddling technique specifically. I will get into that at the end, because of course I know all of you watching here are paddlers. So hip hinging is, okay, cool. We have a bunch of people tuning in. Nobody's told me they can't hear me yet, so I'm going to keep going. Hip hinging is a forward and backward movement. In fancy terms, that's sagittal plane. It's forward and backward body movement. Basically, having the hips be the axis point between the low back and pelvis and the legs. So if I stand up and show you, hips, a forward and backward movement with the hips being the axis point between the low back and pelvis area and the legs. So that's what a hip hinge is. And another way to say that is basically bending at the hips to lower your body down, rather than bending at the spine, and also bending at the hips. Usually there's a slight bend in the knees as well, to lower down. And also what that means is, as your body's lowering down to the ground, my body's getting lower, I'm maintaining a neutral spine. So hip hinging is a way to lower your body and maintain a neutral spine. So why is that useful? And it's useful and important because, hi Foru-san, hi Phil. So hip hinging is useful and important because it allows you, as you lower your body down, not only to maintain a neutral spine, and by neutral spine I mean, yeah, that's a good angle. So by neutral spine I mean there's a natural curve in my lumbar, thoracic, and cervical spine, and I'm maintaining those natural curves as my body lowers down. I'm not flexing or extending through my spine. I'm not arching my back. I'm not rounding my back as I lower down. So it helps you maintain a neutral spine as you lower down. And so maintaining a neutral spine, what that does is it loads you into your legs and not into your back. So it allows us, as we lower down, to use the leg muscles to have that body movement happen. And so rather than loading into my back and using my back to go down and up, I'm using the primary muscle movers and the largest muscles in my entire body, which are located in the backs of the legs. The glutes, the hamstrings are the main muscles that we are using, that we're talking about today. Hi, Lori from Sausalito. Okay, so it's useful and important because it allows us to maintain a neutral spine so we're not loading into the spine. And it allows us to load into the legs, which are the largest, most powerful muscles we have in our body that are designed to generate force and designed to move us. So any body movement, the hips are the fulcrum, the legs are what you want to load into. So hip hinging properly allows you to do that. And it also allows you to maintain core stability. Core meaning, you know, my entire torso, like between the shoulder and hip joints. All of these are my core muscles. And if I am flexing or extending, I might have done that just backwards, but if I'm arching or rounding in my spine, I am usually in some way, shape, or form compromising my core stability. So core stability also helps us maintain a neutral spine, and that's where we're going to be the strongest and most powerful, as well as using the strongest and most powerful muscles in our body. So it's connecting, it's keeping all the body parts connected when we move to be our most safe and powerful. You guys all with me so far? Cool. So, in paddling terms, just to recap, stable core, neutral spine, strong legs. So, and I'll say at this point, which I usually say at all points during my videos, definitely with hip hinging, this is a universally accepted body movement. When it comes to applying these techniques to paddling, there are different schools of thought that I have experienced, and this is what works for me, and this is how I understand applying hip hinging to paddling. And it's by no means my way or the highway, or this is the only way, right? So take what works for you, practice these things, because these are going to apply not only to your paddling, but as I'll show you, to any time you bend over to lift weights, to lift something up, to pick something up, to push your vacuum, to do yard work, to go for a run, whatever it is, this core stability, this spine neutrality, and this loading into your legs are three principles of body movements that apply universally. So yes, then in terms of paddling, keep an open mind and just know that this is how I think about it and this is what works for me. And how to hip hinge. Let's talk about how to actually do this. So, and this is where having your paddle might be a little bit useful for you if this is not something that you've done before. Okay, so hips. When my body lowers down, my hips are the axis point. I'll just put my paddle down for 1 second and show you, and I've already demoed a couple of times. Maintaining a neutral spine, my knees are going to bend and my hips are going to go back, and as my body lowers down, I'm actually pulling, like if I put my hands into my hip creases and push that back, but actually rather than thinking about pushing that back, I'm thinking about as if these muscles on the exact opposite side of my body are pulling back. And so I want to do that, and I want to lower down, keeping a neutral spine. So a cool trick, and I'll go this way, yeah. So a cool trick that you can use is a pole or a paddle, and you want 3 points of contact. And you're gonna have the back of your head, you're gonna have right between your shoulder blades, touching the back of your head, touching the paddle, the right between your shoulder blades, touching the paddle, and then your sacrum, like basically your little tailbone is touching the paddle. And as you lower down, you wanna maintain those 3 points of contact. So some common mistakes would be to have the middle back come off and an arch come through the spine. I don't know if you can see that, but now my middle back is not touching, my shoulder blades are not touching, and I've arched as I lowered down and my butt kind of stuck out, right? Another common mistake would be, and that would be sticking the tailbone out or arching through the upper back. Could make both of those things happen. Another common one that happens is as we lower down, we round in our low back and the tailbone would come off and you would no longer be touching, you would be touching on the middle of the back, but you wouldn't be touching down here on the sacrum or the tailbone. So that would be if you rounded as you lowered down or if you arched as you lowered down. So that's something that you can practice. So that's something that you can practice if this is new to you, to see if you are, in fact, maintaining a neutral spine. And then you're also going to know that you're doing it right if you do not feel this in your back. And you do feel this, especially the lower down you go, into the hamstring. So this should be felt in the backs of the legs primarily. And really it's like as if the upper body's doing nothing but just being moved. Everybody still with me? Is that making sense? I don't see any comments coming in. So again, this is something you can practice. I'm going to talk about how to apply this to paddling in just a minute here. But this applies to like if I'm bending over to pick something up. So rather than going here and then, you know, having my back do a lot of the work, I'm going to go here and I'm going to really pull those hips back. And then I can lower down and pick something up. This can be gardening. Oh, you can't see I have a little plant right here. This can be gardening. I'm maintaining a neutral spine. I'm bending over to pull weeds, right? Like I'm maintaining a neutral spine. I'm letting my legs do that work. Picking a child up. But also like running, right? When we're picking our legs up, we don't want to be having that be loaded into the low back. So if you're somebody who experiences a lot of pain in the low back when you're paddling, pretty safe to assume that there is some loading going on in the back, and this is something that you want to practice. Cool. So how do I apply this to paddling? That's the next thing that I wanted to talk about. Moving right along. So to apply this to paddling, if you're new to paddling and you're new to hip hinging, stick with just the hip hinge first, okay? So normally I do not teach people to paddle by sticking the butt back when they're paddling. We want the body to lower down, but not, we want the hips to lower down, but not back. I'm going to talk about that in just 1 minute here when I get to a little bit more advanced. But again, if you're new to paddling and you are used to paddling with your upper body and not your lower body, I want you to really feel what it feels like to engage the backs of the legs when you're paddling. And so that's probably for the first few times when you're practicing. The hips are going to go back and forward a little bit, but you'll feel those backs of the legs. So when I'm paddling, I don't have a handle on this paddle, but let's pretend. I'm going to, rather than arch my back as I go to reach forward, I'm going to hinge. So my spine is staying neutral. And it's like a counterbalance at this point. I'm going to talk about how to not make it a counterbalance in a second, but it's a counterbalance at this point. So my spine is neutral. And then I'm going to lower down. And so at the catch is basically I'm lowering into a hinge. the pull, if we break the, which I love to do, is to break the paddle stroke down into just two sections: catch, pull, load, unload. I'm gonna load into my legs. I'm gonna unload by driving off my legs. I'm gonna paddle from the bottom up, not the top down. So, catch, pull, load, unload. Paddling is really complex, and we can try to make it really simple. So, I'm going to hinge, and then I'm going to, I load it up into the legs. I feel this in the backs of the legs. I'm going to pull by literally driving off the backs of the legs. So if you are somebody who does lift and you do deadlifts, or you do kettlebell swings, right? Think about that, the power that it takes to lift the bar, or the power that you have when you're driving the bell up. If you're not a lifter, I don't know, those are my explanations for now, right? That driving force, those are the muscles that you want to use to be driving you and forcing your paddle, right? So, again, I'm still kind of talking to newbies. We're so used to thinking about I'm pulling with my arms and I'm up here in my shoulders. We want to be down here in our hips. So, how do I make this happen without my butt going back and forward? Because if you listen to any of Seychelle's previous videos, I always talk about not sticking your butt out, right? So the other thing that you've probably heard me talk about if you watch my videos is motorcycle gang. Okay, is ankles. So I'm going to go into a hinge, right? And then watch my ankles. Boom. That is your paddle technique. Hip hinge. So it's a hip hinge with quite a bit of ankle flexion. If I didn't have my paddle down here, I'd kind of be falling on my face. That's the advanced version of thinking about a hip hinge at the catch. So, again, it does make it kind of complex because I actually think ankles, so my body weight goes forward, and I'm like, whoa, I'm going to fall forward, right? And I hinge, and so my hips lower down, but they're not just going back because I have that ankle flexion. Do you guys see that? Does that make sense? Somebody comment and let me know that I'm not awesome explanation and demonstration. Okay, you're welcome, Julie. So then the pull, once I am here, so once I am ankles, hinge, so my spine is neutral, I didn't arch, I didn't round, I didn't load up into my back. I am loaded right now I'm loaded actually into the front and backs of the legs, because here would just be loaded into the backs of the legs, but when I add that ankle flexion, I'm loaded all up in the legs right now. So the pull would then be, this is a triple flexion. My ankles are flexed, my knees are flexed, my hips are flexed. I'm going to extend. I'm going to triple extend the hips, and I'm going to drive again with the most powerful part of my body, the backs of the legs. I'm going to drive that forward, and I'm going to extend. Right? So flex, flex, flex. Extend, 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 right? So here's a regular hip hinge, right? And when I'm paddling, this part, that's my power when I'm pulling, right? So what the rest of your body is doing is really important. I'm just explaining where the power is coming from. So here's how that looks when I'm paddling. Boom. And then, oh. Yeah. So cool things to practice. You can practice these. Definitely practice these things on land. Practice hip hinges when you're warming up to paddle. Practice single leg hip hinges when you're warming up to paddle, because that's going to work on stability. And I did these in my warm-up video 4 weeks ago, where we did hinging, but we did them on one leg, because now I'm working my stabilizers as well. So practice them when you're warming up to paddle, practice them when you're warming up to lift weights, practice them when you're warming up to run, practice it when you're doing housework and yard work. Because it's going to save your spine, and it's going to work back to your legs, and it's going to feel really good. And Lori, that's a great question. Ankle flexion, then hinge? Yes. It's kind of all happening within the span of a fraction of a second. So it's kind of hard to say, I'm going to flex my ankles, and then I'm going to hinge, and then because it's like, we can't actually paddle in slow motion, but yes, the ankle flexion does start to happen first because getting that body weight forward is happening first. Cool. Great question. Any other questions? This was a fun video. Anyone need anything else explained again? You can also save this video and watch it anytime. It'll be up on the SIC Maui Facebook and YouTube pages. So while I wait for any more comments to come in, I have a couple of announcements for you. Oh, clinics. Yes. I have some in-person clinics coming up in Maryland. I'm going to be in Maryland August 11th through 14th. I'm doing clinics on the 11th and 12th. You can contact me or Be More Sup to sign up. They're also doing a race on the 14th, so that could be a fun getaway, or if you're in the area. And then I have, what else? On my online coaching programs, I have a couple of space opened for working with me one-on-one on paddle coaching. We do training. I do your training program. I do video analysis, so we work on technique a lot through video. We also talk one-on-one through video, and I coach you to reach your goals, and it's super fun. And then something that I'm super fired up about, and if you follow me on social media, that you know that I've been working primarily with women for the last year, and I have a coaching program that is all about the feminine. And so I'm working with female athletes, so women who are very much like me, where we are go-getters, we're overachievers, we're workaholics, we're really, really, really powerful, and we tend to ignore our softer feminine side. And so I want to teach you, I want to show you how those attributes of who you are actually power sources in themselves, and that when we can utilize both aspects or all aspects of who we are and really honor that, how it transforms your life. So if you want to work with me, please reach out. If you want to come to a clinic, please reach out. And yeah, thanks for all the comments. And Amy, paddling in slow motion would be awesome to practice. One thing you can do to help you paddle in slow motion is use some resistance. So the simplest way to use resistance is to drag a leash behind you. That's going to slow you down a little bit, create a little bit of a slow motion. You can tie bungee cords with like a wiffle ball or tennis ball around your board, or even just bungees around your board. Like anything to create resistance does give you a little bit of that slowing things down. So not something you want to practice all the time, but definitely something that you can use to help when you're working on your technique. Chuck is asking, what are thoughts of parallel stance and hinging with full hips versus having one leg slightly back while hinging? That's a great question. Let me see. Okay, so I'm parallel right now, which is my typical stance, right, which is what I've been demonstrating. So if it's hard to do here, versus paddling side leg back. So yeah, it's actually one thing that's easier to do with with a staggered stance. It's actually easier to get your body weight forward, and that's one of the reasons why paddlers prefer that. So it's not something I've actually thought much about. However, it's definitely, like, I can still, even if I'm not paddling, if I'm just standing staggered here, I can hinge. However, I definitely feel it more, and this is something that I do remember now that I'm doing this. When I'm staggered, I tend to feel more on that paddling side, whereas when I stand parallel, the load feels more equally shared, and so I don't like to just wear one side out, although yes, we do change sides every several strokes to get a fresh side. My thoughts are, and the reason why I think I mostly do parallel is because using the full power of both legs feels better than just one. However, if you're somebody who doesn't have great ankle flexion, using that staggered stance is going to help you get your body weight forward. So there can be benefits to both. Again, there's no like cut and dry, like do, don't, yes, no. It's what's going to work for your body, you know, your mobility, your strengths. So my answer is you can try both, you can do both, and see how that feels, right? Does that make sense? Okay, cool. You're so welcome, Rebecca. Hello in Israel. And yeah, I'm going to sign off. This was super fun. Thanks everybody for watching. And I will see you in a couple weeks for another talk story, or maybe I'll see you in person, or maybe you want to reach out and talk about coaching. Thank you. Thank you, SIC, for having us, for having me, for hosting this platform, and we'll keep doing it. Oh, one more question, okay. Because it's a good one. Peter's asking, don't you kill your lower back with hinging? The point of hinging, if you go back, you might have missed the beginning part of the video, so go back and watch the beginning part. The point of hinging is that it saves your lower back. We're not using our lower back. We're using our hips as an axis to keep a neutral spine, to not load up in the low back. So if you're killing your lower back with hinging, go back, watch the beginning of the video. You're missing keeping the spine neutral, because when you're hinging properly, you feel it in your legs, you load up your legs, you might kill your hamstrings, but you shouldn't kill your lower back. Okay, now I'm signing off. Love you, bye.